Welcome to Stay in Your Lane. I'm your host, John Maley. Today we have a very special guest, one person that was on our very first podcast. I'd like to introduce Wendy Workman from SK Food Group. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
We're good. So today, I want to get your thoughts. We're talking with a lot of our clients. Everybody's planning on budgeting for 2023 in the next 6 to 8 months. And we're trying to figure out from a directional perspective, how do we help them? How do we plan successfully together after 2021 and what looks like to be the second half of 2022? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Love to understand what you're struggling with, and maybe we can help each other.
Well, I'm struggling with how to strategically align freight expense for 2023 with the factors as they're known today. So we won't actually start budgeting until August, but we do make decisions based off of product mix, based off of available labor, based off of supply of components, where to produce something at. And we have one facility that it's more cost effective to have it running full steam than it is the other two, based off of all of those factors. So the question is, do we make the assumption that that facility will be completely full capacity to get the most effective use of our dollars? Do we introduce another customer into another facility to create some diversification of our customer portfolio? What does that do to the mix? How does that change the inventory that I pick up or ship out, and the lanes that are associated to that? So I feel like there has to be a much larger analysis completed in order to do a good budget for 2023. But the daunting part of that is that I can spend all this time doing this analysis and all this time doing the strategy with my partners, and something else happen next year and it be completely blown out of the water. So is the best strategy to plan for the worst case scenario, or do you try to just mitigate your risk as much as possible? Historically, that's what we'll do. We'll mitigate our risk as much as possible, but there need to be some leading indicators now that we track a little closer that will give us some line of sight to where our freight budget may be influenced. So I would like your perspective on indicators in the freight market, other than fuel, that could give us some perspective of where we think that part of the industry is going to head in the next 18 months.
We just talked with the economist for the ATA, Robert Costello. He made some good points. 2021 for all of us was an outlier year.
Yeah.
Economically, growth in the United States is normally in the range of 2%, give or take, a percent either way, but pretty steadily a 2% market. The crazy number from 2021 ended up at 12.1% economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
So from what he shared with us, that is an anomaly from every perspective. You have manufacturing equipment issues, you have driver issues, you have capacity issues all over, you have diesel that steadily has risen. All of these factors, drivers' wages went up, inflation. Only one job, Bob stated, only one job across the board in our economy went up as high as inflation rose or higher, and that was truck driving.
Yeah.
So if that frames it up, puts a picture together, the big issue is the majority of jobs added in the truck driving market are not long haul over the road, which is where we sit. Majority of ours. So we're going to plan based off of what Bob is telling us, and expect that this year is going to still finish up close second to 2021 from an overall perspective, but we're trending back towards the norm. So in answering your question, what is the norm? Are we going to trend back to 2%? Are we going to trend back to zero or negative and then come back up and stabilize? That's the next 18-month picture that we're trying to plan for also. So
Yeah.
you mitigate and plan the best you can. I don't think that anybody's budget would allow for 2021 or even 2022 so far. The first 3 months of this year were probably a peak for the refrigerated and food side of transportation, where the van market maybe came off, and so did the flatbeds at the first of the year some. But the refrigerated and frozen, the food sector was still very strong for the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So if that gives you some insight as to what we're all dealing with, I don't see it changing from a fuel perspective. From every indicator we're seeing, it's more of a production issue, a volume of production and demand for the diesel fuel. And the prices are high everywhere, not just in the United States. It's a global issue. We're going to see inflation and high diesel fuel prices for the near future and maybe much longer from what we're seeing and hearing. So how do you budget for that, Wendy?
Dartboard, magic 8 ball.
Magic 8 ball.
Magic 8 ball.
You know, saw had one of those when we were a kid, but haven't seen one in a long time. What do you know, when you speak to the people with SK, you know, and you paint these pictures like we're talking about now, you know, how do you plan your budgeting to be successful?
Well, I mean, historically, we have taken, history and looked at any kind of mix changes that are going to happen with our customer base. And we make some assumptions based off that, and we'll add 3-4% based off of what pricing has done over the last specific time period. I'm not sure how we're going to handle this year. I know that it's going to take a lot more input from different partners within my teams to determine the best strategy to prepare for, what we're going to see is another high year. So if we trend, 10% in 2022 and it's going to realign in 2023, with the Fed hiking, interest rates, with consumer demand, or is it still going to be, pulling heavy for food service, which is a lot of what we pull. We do a lot of retail customers. What is that indicator going to show us? I mean, a lot of people, once, the economy slows down, they eat more at home. So will our retail market or retail demand go up? Okay, well, that has a different indicator for our freight costs. If food service is expected to stay steady or grow, okay, well, that has a different influence on our freight costs as well. So I think we have to take a look at what we're expecting our customers to do in 2023 and try to align our freight with those expectations. Now, that's just given that all of that falls in line, right? I mean, we've had some customers that, have had record, and it's a good problem to have, don't get me wrong, record growth, which is wonderful, but it's hard to pull all of the nuances together to respond to that growth. I think my company does a very good job of responding to that. We're very nimble, but there's a cost associated to that, right? And I think we have to do a better job of projecting that. And I don't know that we've done that in the past because we've never seen the kind of growth that we've seen in the last 2 years. So, the fact that Bob is saying that, 2020 was or 2021 was a record year, that doesn't surprise me because all of our indicators just in our industry have aligned with that.
If you think about it, you're talking about 6 times what the normal is from a growth perspective. Now, the other indicators that he mentioned were housing market. Still, it rivaled 2006, and manufacturing homes anticipated to be at that 5 to 6% point still throughout the year, with inflation, with interest rate hikes, et cetera. I don't know if you noticed, but I've been eating well. And I think people don't stop eating when things are tight economically. They change what they're eating.
Right.
So, maybe your products that are on the lesser expensive side will increase, which may cut into the profit margin also. So
Yeah.
depending on what you're selling, what you're making, and what type of a business and what your margins are, whether it's retail, wholesale, I think that, eating out slows down.
It does.
The restaurant food service business slows down in the COVID economy. The big thing is, what's that bounce back look like? How do we plan and project for that? Just as similar as the push to e-com since COVID made a huge impact on brick and mortar, and that's considered a permanent shift to the today.
It is, yeah.
So people aren't going back to the store. They're going to stay with the e-com, but we're seeing e-com volumes start to trend down for the first time in 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah, that actually doesn't surprise me. I never really enjoyed going to the grocery store. And then when COVID hit, now I find it an excuse to just get out of the house, right? So if I can go to the store rather than to order online, I will, just to get out of the house or to just interact with people. Not that my cat isn't a complete bit of fun, but you do look for that human interaction. You do look for that that dialogue with just people, because cats don't say a lot. So I think there's a little bit of psychology to that. How are people, now that we're coming out of, the pandemic is becoming more endemic, and we have vaccines, we have strategies to combat it. People are starting to just come out of their shell. I was at a board meeting last night, and I have a lady that always wears a mask no matter what because of her father, and she didn't wear a mask last night, which I was a little surprised, but that's because she's starting to feel more comfortable, that the fact that there's all these other things that can help her and her family combat the endemic. So there is some psychology to that. I think there's psychology to purchasing. There's that comfort food, right? My company, does a lot of comfort food. And, now that people are not needing that comfort food, how's that going to change our mix?
Right. So, I think everyone as a manufacturer is going to have a different impact, or that's going to impact them differently.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of price increases given.
We did.
The first 3 months of this year, especially in the first 2 months, which is going to force people to make decisions when their discretionary income is going to go to the gas pump, the grocery store, and inflation. We're going to see a pullback. And I think we're starting to see it. You're also seeing the just-in-time inventory model is now shifted to a just-in-case, where people are starting to carry. Bob said that,
yeah,
and I picked up on it. So you're seeing inventory levels rising, which allows people to supply, to demand and forecast and plan better, which helps from a cost perspective. But I think, in our side of the industry, we're expecting it to trend down towards a normal. The question is, what is normal when fuel's $5.50? It's 175% higher than it was 12 months ago.
right.
So who plans for that? Who plans for a 12% growth in 2021 economy? Who plans for 175% increase in fuel? How do you budget for those things?
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's part of a bigger picture. So I don't know anybody that's not struggled over the past couple of years with a budget. It's usually done by March. But hey, thank you, Wendy. We appreciate the time. We appreciate your input and knowledge, and definitely look forward to having you on again in the future.
Great. It was nice talking to you guys again.
Terrific. Thanks for the time, Wendy.
Have a great day.
You too.